We got Kat and we got Rob with us today, both senior leads out at the airport. And I don't know if you've noticed, but the weather has started to change a little bit. Yeah. And unfortunately, we know cold weather's coming. Fortunately, we have contingency plans for that. And that's what we're going to kind of talk about today, is some of the things that a lot of the seniors know this stuff, right? Even the sophomores and the juniors, but the new freshmen maybe not have been as acclimated to what North Dakota has in store for them for the winters. And the last couple of winters have actually been pretty nice, to be honest with you. But we're here to talk about cold weather operations. One of you start out. When is it considered cold weather operations here?
I think when the temperature starts dropping below freezing or gets close to freezing, I think that's when we kind of start cold weather ops. That's when you have the frost threat and just icing threats and clouds and whatnot. So whenever you see the temps hovering closer to freezing is, I think, when we start cold weather ops at UND, I think. Yeah.
So what does that mean for a student when they're coming out to get their plane, put their slip in, and they need to have certain things with them for cold weather ops?
So, for that one, they need to follow the safety policy and procedure. Outlines they need their winter approved equipment, or I guess clothing. So they need their jacket, winter boots, gloves, and a winter hat. So I know I have other things that I'll bring on top of that. I have a little hand warmer that I bring. It's electronic. I got it from Amazon. I charge it because I'm always cold. Obviously, when it's right near freezing, it's not as cold, right? If it's just that -1 or 0, you're fine. But when it's gets into the really cold temps, you need all your equipment, things that'll.
And that's the bare minimum.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So you gotta prepare for the -20s and -25s, and so you might need another sweater or a hoodie or like Kat said, those Amazon gadgets that help you keep warm.
And I think we have to clarify here for people that don't know, this is not for in the plane. This is not necessarily for in the plane. Right. The planes can be cold, but this is more just in case. Yeah. Right.
Correct.
So go ahead.
And pre-flight stuff too, right? Because when you get to the plane, it's not always going to be in the hangar. So it's before, you go fly, you want to check the plane. You're going to be standing outside for, 10 to 15 minutes potentially. And then after as well. But then, yes, like you said, emergencies as well.
So as fun as it is not to get up early, it's really nice pre-brief or pre-flighting in the hangar. So hint for anyone that's looking to get their launches scheduled. Let's talk about preparation. We're talking pre-flighting the plane, but how about yourself? What kind of weather products should people be looking into when they're looking at, cold weather ops or possible snow or mix or that kind of stuff?
You've got the the freezing probability chart, right? That's a good one there, and the icing probability chart, right? And then the icing severity chart. Two charts you can easily use to kind of gauge one, what's the icing threat, and two, what's the intensity of the icing threat, right? But something you have to think about is, maybe the icing probability chart that says you're going to have icing at 3,000, right? But look outside and see, do you have visible moisture? Do you have clouds, right? Do you have anything that's going to get you that ice, right? So a common issue is students come back and say, oh yeah, the icing probability chart saying it's 3,000 is going to be icing, and we can't go, but it's a clear day, or there's a few clouds around, you can just maneuver around them. So those are two very good charts you can use. Obviously, you can use a winds aloft chart to see, where it's going to be freezing, the freezing level charts as well, right? Those are some of the primary ones that, I kind of use when it comes to the weather products. Yeah.
Kat, anything?
No,
else?
That's all I would say. I would say you can use a mix of, finding that on ForeFlight and then also on aviationweathercenter.com.
And PIROPs are always good. And just asking your peers, hey, you were just up, how was it?
Yeah.
So use all that available information for sure. Let's talk about the Seminole because, obviously we have to do some engine shutdowns. Yep. And what are we dealing with when we're talking about cold weather? Because that's a whole different ballgame.
When you're flying the Seminole and you're, simulating a single engine scenario, you want to really take care of both engines, the one that's operating, the one that's keeping you aloft, and then the other one, obviously, that you have shut down. So we have a couple, guidelines, stand man procedures. So when we're securing our engines, we don't want to do that below -7 degrees Celsius. So make sure we're watching those temps when we're aloft. We really want to just encourage closing cowl flaps. So keep the heat in the engine. Don't let it escape for no good reason, right? Keep those flaps closed. And then on the ground, when we're doing our run-up checklist, when we exercise those props, we want to get that oil moving in and out of those prop hubs so we can keep that oil temp warm, and then it's going to help with feathering and securing that prop.
Yeah, and I would say like a good temperature for you to kind of look for is your oil temps to be between about 95 to 100. So make sure you exercise those props in that temperature range to prevent prop overspeeds. That's one of the biggest write-ups in the winter is prop overspeeds, right? After we implemented the temp limit in terms of keep exercising those props until you get to about 95 to 100, we had a significant decrease in the amount of prop overspeeds on takeoff. So I think that's something to kind of think about when you're like exercising the props during your run up.
Okay.
Yeah. And then close your cowl flaps in the air, but also as part of your after landing checklist, so that you're preserving that heat even after you come back and like park the airplane.
Let's talk cross country operations. So I've got all my gear. I'm going on a cross country. What is different in wintertime versus summertime for cross country ops?
I think, one thing is airport conditions, right? So some airports that we go to are not attended fairly often. So you might have a snowstorm that went through and the runways are not cleared yet, or better yet, the ramps might not be cleared and you might not be able to get fuel, right? I think one of the most common issues we face is the frost threat, where people go in cross countries closer to the evening time, and once it gets dark, your temps and dew points start to match with each other, and you get frost in the wings. Cross country airports don't have defrost like we do here at UND. So what ends up happening is they either need to put the plane in the hangar, wait till the next day, or get a very expensive de-ice to get rid of all that frost. So most of the time, what ends up happening is the crew gets stuck at an cross-country airport during winter ops here at UND. Yeah,
and that's why we have airports that are specifically outlined for winter-approved airports versus during the summer. There's a lot more airports we can go to because we don't need all those services.
So when you're thinking about planning a cross-country, and you're looking at the list of winter-approved airports, it's not a reason of we just don't want you to go to these airports for no reason outside of it, but there's a very specific reason behind it. If you were to land, find out fuel's not available, and then for some reason could not get your engine started, and there's nobody at the airport, you got a real problem there.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah.
So there is a rhyme and reason for it, obviously. PIREPs. Tell me about PIREPs during wintertime.
Well, I think a big thing to just note, if someone's giving a pilot report and stating that they got ice or they got something on their wings, believe them. Don't say, I need to go see for myself and go up into it. Obviously, we don't know. There's no forecast or weather report stating that there is guaranteed icing in whatever weather conditions there are. But if there's a PIREP, that's guaranteed there was icing at that time, at that spot. So believe people when they make a PIREP, is what I would say.
Yeah, and to add to that, whenever you give a PIREP to ATC, for example, just make sure you have relevant information there. What altitude, what temperature you saw and where you got the ice, what kind of icing you got. Was it during a climb? Was it during a descent? Right. A very common thing that crews do is they come back, they land, they get some ice, and they come and tell the SOF. But they never told ATC that they got icing. So. Be a good neighbor, help your friends out, let ATC know, let the SOF know. So make sure everyone is informed when you get icing, so especially when it comes to PIREPs.
And I think people get a little nervous about that, about reporting icing on an aircraft that they're not supposed to get icing on. Well, I mean, it happens. It's an accident. It wasn't intentional, hopefully, but let others know. I mean, it's really, really important for the safety of flight. So where could you see ice really forming?
On the smallest bit of your aircraft, I guess, is the best way to put it. On the Archer, we have a little door stop. So when you open that door, there's a tiny little piece of metal. That's kind of the most, I don't know, the spot where you would see icing the first or the most. It would start there, smallest spot. Otherwise, it would be on your flash guard at the end of your wingtip. So there's a little piece of metal, and that's where you'll see that frost form.
Yep.
And what kind of conditions are we talking about? For a pilot that's going up on a cross country, what are some things to look for where you're like, maybe I should stay out of that?
Well, any time you have temperatures below freezing and visible moisture, right? That's a sure shot recipe for ice, right? So if you're going to go in a cloud, for example, and if it's, -1, close to 0, odds are you're probably going to get ice, So the best course of action is to kind of avoid going into that, Same thing if it's, for example, snowing, or if it's, if you see some rain or virga, right? So it's probably warmer up top, but down below at the altitude, it's colder, So there's a high chance you might get icing off of that as well, right?
And this is where personal minimums will come into effect.
Yeah.
Right. So how can we relate personal minimums on this?
I would just say whatever you're comfortable. Obviously, we have students who are in very many different flight courses, right? So we got the 102 private pilots, instrument students. Maybe they're used to flying in the clouds if they did, their flight course during the summer when they were able to get actual instrument conditions. But I would just say, when it comes to that, you've got to be aware of icing, right? Nobody should really be comfortable, or icing shouldn't be in your personal minimums if you are flying an aircraft that's not approved for icing. Maybe, the King Air, sure, people feel comfortable flying in icing conditions, but I would just say for any student going through the program, you shouldn't feel comfortable with even wanting to risk it.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so you go up, you pick up some ice, and we kind of talked about this, about making a PIREP, but what information, you kind of alluded maybe altitude, but what else can we tell, ATC on a PIREP on icing?
Just, what kind of icing you got, right? And how quickly it was accumulating. That's probably an important thing to kind of let ATC know of, yep, I got, this much ice in this much time. And then just, like we talked about earlier, just, what phase of flight, like, was it when you were coming in fast? Were you slow? Because it changes as well, different types of airplanes report different types of PIREPs, right? If you have the CRJ that's taken off out of Grand Forks, now they have, anti-icing capabilities that prevent ice from forming. And even the ice formation is going to be different because of how quickly they're going to get through it, right? So if a CRJ reports, light rime icing, odds are it might not be light rime icing when it comes to an Archer, right? So that's something you have to kind of think about is, or if they report no icing, they may have just gone through that layer super quick to not get any ice, right? But we might get ice. Mm-hmm. So that's something we have to really be aware of, right? So,
they could have been the ice on the ground, and
they could have been,
had their holdover fluid still, and it would have carried all the way through the clouds.
Yeah. And then, in addition to that, right, you report a PIREP to the SOF. Something that they should remember to do is let dispatch know that they got ice, so that we don't dispatch that airplane to another crew.
So what's going to happen then when that plane comes back and it's got ice? You report it to dispatch, and then what?
Yeah, so you should report it to dispatch, line. They're all on the same frequency, so you should let them all know at the same time. But dispatch, let them know, line, so they can potentially bring the plane into a hangar to get that ice to melt off. Maintenance, maybe, if they might need to hear about some things. And then you should file a report. So filing an incident report, just so we can keep that for our tracking purposes, report it to our safety department.
How's pre-flight different in winter versus summer?
So in the winter, one of the most common areas where you can see ice on an airplane, right, is when the temperatures are very close to freezing and all the slush on the ground gets kicked up under the wings, right? So that's something that you have to really watch out for, because it's very easy for us to notice all the ice on the leading edges of the wing. So I think there have been many cases where the crew that post-flight of the airplane, prior to getting inside the building, did not look under the wings, and you have icicles forming down there, right? So, and that's a very quick fix where line can come in and spray some de-ice fluid and get rid of all those icicles before the next crew gets there. So a good post-flight is as important as a good pre-flight as well, because you could see the ice accumulation on there. And for or pre-flight, same thing. You can get frost, or you could have ice that the previous crew did not see when they left.
Yeah, and they could have taxied through water, and when they got in for the post-flight, it was just wet, right? Mm-hmm. But you should anticipate that that's probably going to freeze for the next crew, and be proactive about it. So what else can they do in terms of like in taxiing with like slush and stuff? What are some other things that students and instructors just to be careful of?
Just, taxiing slowly, right? And slowly, not just to prevent ice, like a slush from hitting the wings, but also because it's slippery, right? So you're going to slip and slide all over the place if you're taxiing super fast. So, watching those taxi speeds, and if you're unsure, just slowing down as much as you can. And if it's a case where, snowstorm goes through, things are plowed, you're one of the first planes to go run up, and as you're running up, the plane's sliding all over the place, that's probably a good time to inform the SOF and let them know, hey, the taxiways are super slippery, right? And if you can't move the airplane, or if the plane's, if you slit somewhere, and if it's hard for you to maneuver the airplane, maybe that's a good time to call a line and ask them to like tow you out of there as well, right? Instead of chancing it where you end up stuck in a snowbank. Right?
Yeah. So we are going to have snowstorms. Mm-hmm. It's going to happen. There's no way around it. And we know, us that have been here a while, that it takes time for Grand Forks to get plowed out sometimes. I mean, we're talking sometimes a day or two before we're fully plowed out. But you get plowed out, you take off, and you decide, I'm going to Crookston or going to Warren or going to an airport. How do I know if it's been plowed or not?
See, that's proper pre-flight planning, right? Because before you even decide to go, maybe Grand Forks is clear, you should be checking those airports, check NOTAMs. Sometimes, if it takes a couple days to clear Grand Forks, we're a bigger airport, so obviously it'll take longer, but Crookston's a little bit smaller, or some of the satellite airports are. I would suggest if, you don't see any NOTAMs or anything like that, calling the airport manager. A lot of times they know what's going on at those airports, so they can help you figure that out.
What if you didn't check? Just took off. What do you do now?
I mean, you can overfly, obviously. Sure. You're going to go to that airport anyway and see what it's like. If the runway is all covered in snow, obviously don't land. We don't want you landing on that. But inform the SOF and other crews as well, right? We don't want people thinking that they might be able to, or going and then not realizing it as they're coming in because they didn't do proper scanning. So,
and I think one thing to keep in mind also is if you overfly the airport and looks like maybe it's okay, it's probably not a good time to test it.
Yep.
Because landing in that snow could be really, really bad. Yeah. Last thing to talk about here, let's talk about the cleanliness of the wings, because I think there's a misconception on people that if it's frost but it's smooth, I'm good to go, or if it's got a light snow, it'll blow off during takeoff.
Well,
talk to me.
Yeah, if it's frost, it's frost, right? So if it's there, like it's there. You have to. It's a contamination of the wing. You have to get a defrost, right? So one thing to remember is when you're getting a defrost, don't preemptively ask for a defrost because you're going to get frost, right? So you have to wait till some frost accumulates before you ask for that defrost, because that's something that line prefers, rather than just spraying a completely clean airplane, right? It's not. Defrost fluid is not some sort of preventative measure, right? It's to get rid of all that frost. So that's something crews should remember when they're out there is, you look at the temps dew points are very close to each other. You're going to get frost early in the morning. A common issue is people ask for defrost when they don't have any frost. And now the planes that actually got frost are unable to get defrosted in time. So that's one thing to remember. Second thing, yes, it's, as PIC, you have to make a judgment call of, if, there are little specks of snow on the wing, like, is that, something that you should fly with or not, right? So, but when in doubt, you can always stay on the ground and make that decision and not put yourself in a risky situation, right? So, and that's, I think, the only advice that I could give someone, So yes, there are times where there might be a little bit of, a tiny little system passes through and little specks of snow in the wing and it just blows right off, right? But, if you're not confident in that, it's easier to stay on the ground than get up in the air.
Sure. And the other thing to think about too is that if you got pulled out of a warm hangar, and then you get a little bit of light snow in there, that just turns to ice then a lot of times. So
rather than, the plane being cold soaked for the day and it's been sitting out there, it gets a little bit, it'll brush right off.
So. Yeah. Anything else to add?
Not even on the icing, but even like pre-flight, we forgot to talk about engine covers.
Oh,
I know
yeah.
that's something we have, right, for our planes. One of my friends made a joke. She's like, they're like little sweaters for our airplanes. I'm like, yeah, you say that from someone from California. But yeah, so when we advice for having those engine covers is when you do that pre-flight walk around, make sure you do the entire plane, leave the engine cover on, and then come back after you finish it all, take the engine cover off. That way the engine stays warm and you keep all those temps in. So.
Speaking of engine covers, when you request a defrost, take the engine covers off, right? That's something to remember as well. And something for the newbies to remember is defrost fluid is extremely slippery and you can get it everywhere. So be careful where you step after defrost, right? So a couple of things to look at first is if you get a defrost, make sure the plane was defrosted correctly, right? And there is no more frost left on the airplane. And the holdover time for defrost fluid is about 30 minutes. So you need to request that defrost right before you start those engines. So get the engine covers off in the baggage area, get the defrost, and get moving so you don't exceed the holdover time in there.
Okay.
And even when you get a defrost, check where the wind is coming from. Stand upwind. When I was a freshman, I left my flight bag right in the line of the defrost. It got soaked in defrost fluid, and I was like, okay, well, here we are. I had to throw the bag away at the end. But
well, it wasn't going to build up ice.
Right.
You got that going for you.
Exactly. So
Kat and Rob, thank you very much for coming in. A lot of good information about cold weather ops here at UND Aerospace, and 'tis the season. We're moving right into it.
Yeah, thanks for having us, man.
Awesome. Thank you so much.